Next is Hunter x Hunter. Or really Hunter x Hunter. I just call it Hunter x Hunter because it's funner that way. And it probably pisses a lot of people, a lot of fans off. I do not care. It's Hunter x Hunter to me because I called it that before I knew it was Hunter x Hunter. And it's too late now. It's too late, I'm sorry. Okay, Leorio's gonna be cut off, maybe. Oh wait, I'll try not to cut him off. Hunter x Hunter is amazing show. Okay, I can't not cut him off. That's how he's gonna be. So Hunter x Hunter, I would say, is solid in depicting different ages. Let's see. What I'm trying to think and look through my notes at the same time. Let's see. Because I wrote notes on like different characters' ages, and I'm looking at my phone to check. Oh yeah, Leorio is apparently 19. I'm looking at my notes. Yeah, he's 19, but to me he looks older than 19. But there are some dudes who are 19 that do be looking like they're in their 20s. So I'd say overall, Hunter x Hunter has a fairly good designs that represent their ages. Gon and Killua especially, they look like kids, they look very young, because they are super young, and to me, they represent their ages. Looking back, Kurapika does appear young in appearance, which reflects his age being only 17. For my notes, he's only 17. So the reason Kurapika looks visibly young, even though he kind of does have that like parental energy, it's because he's only 17. So for me, when I watch a show, I always thought Kurapika was older. I thought he was similar in age to Leorio, like he was also like 18, 19, but he's only 17. So the reason to me I felt watching it that he was older was because of how Kurapika acted. He just acted older and more mature for his age, and he took sort of a parental role to Gon and Killua when they were in scenes together because they were literal very young kids. So as a result, Kurapika seemed older than 17, just because Gon and Killua are so young. Really though, his designer flex being only 17, then later on in the timeline, he is 19 years old, so it makes sense for me. So they're not going to be in questionable that they tried. They're going to be, Hunter x Hunter should be higher than that. I think it is realistic by Leorio. Like, there are some 19-year-olds that look older. Like, if you think of it a bit longer, some 19-year-olds can appear older in age, similar to Leorio, where it's like they already look like adults. And then some 19-year-olds look literally still like they're 15, right? It's either or, so I think in terms of age, they get the rarest Pokemon card. Hunter, Hunter, or Hunter x Hunter, whichever one you call it by. I do Hunter x Hunter because it's funner that way for me. Rarest Pokemon card, rightfully deserved. I think they accurately show how young Gon and Killua look, and I really appreciate how accurately they depict the ages.
Are you sure about that?
Next is Death Note. Okay. Wait a minute, I'm just gonna do a little water break. I'll probably cut this part because I need to drink more water before I continue this video because I've been talking for a long time. And as you can tell my voice, I need to drink some water. Okay, I'm back from my water break. For Death Note, L is 22, according to the wiki page. I thought he was like 17 or 18 when I was a kid. This is freaking hilarious to me. Looking back on it, he does still look sort of young to me, so apparently he's 22. Light should probably look a tad bit younger since he's only like 18 at the start of the series. I think it's realistic to have the baby face when he's actually older, but appears young to others. So in terms of like L, I think it's realistic that he kind of has a baby face, so that's why to me when I was a kid I thought he was like the same age as Light. And I'm surprised that they're not the same age. Like when I was a kid I'm like, wait, aren't they the same age? No, apparently L was older. So because of this, like, it's realistic to me that there are 22-year-olds that still have like that very young looking face. on them. So it makes sense, realistically, for Elle to technically, maybe, occasionally to some people, look like a teenager. That's realistic. Some 20-year-olds kind of do look like teenagers. For Mika's character, apparently she's a year older than Light when I looked on the wiki page. So I think to make them look more similar in age, Light should have been drawn a bit younger looking in the beginning, because to me, they look the same age. Like, Mika, to me, does not look a year older. And in terms of the other characters, Mello looks older than 19 to me. I don't know, like, for me, like, even from this tiny image, like, to me, he looks kind of like older than 19. So because of this, this is most definitely not S tier. I think it's in the questionable category, where it's like questionable, but they tried. Like there's clear, like, the adults do look like adults for the most part. I just think that in terms of the teenagers' ages, or like the young adults' ages, because I'm pretty sure they become like 18, 19, it's a bit questionable how they drew them, especially in terms of Light and Mika, and maybe Mello a bit. I think Mello looked, vaguely from what I remember, he does look old to me, but he's supposed to be 19. I don't know. Questionable, but they tried. Next, we got Soul Eater. Oh my goodness, that is so blurry. We are shrinking that. And Soul Eater belongs where it deserves to belong, which is most definitely in, I believe, should it be rarest Pokemon card? I think they, from what I recall, and even looking at this image, they have a very distinct, like, sort of awkwardness in their style to them. Like, they look distinctly like teenagers, where it's like they're a bit awkward, they're a bit wacky looking, they kind of have very distinct traits in their designs where you can easily tell the differences between them, and I really enjoy distinct character designs. Soul Eater most definitely has very visibly distinct character design, and I think they look like teenagers from what I recall. Like, were there questionable portions in the anime? Most definitely there were, but in terms of how their age was depicted, I'm pretty sure that they all look like teenagers. Did Blackstar look too buff? I can't remember. Does he look too... No, I don't think... From this image, he kind of just looks like a very tiny... Because what I distinctly remember about Soul Eater was that the dudes were super short, and like he kind of just looks like this short, stubby, kind of a little bit beefy but not too much character. So I think their proportions were realistic as teenagers. We actually have 4 animes in the rarest Pokemon card here. I'm kind of surprised that we were getting this many. Am I being too nice? Maybe I am being too nice. Should have Soul Eater been in Get to High 5? Perhaps, but we're going past that because I have literally no time for this. Okay, Skate to Infinity. I should be doing this quicker. I'm like taking way too long. Skate to Infinity, I do believe, properly showcase their ages. To me, Longa and Reiki look their age. They both look youthful enough to be teens, personally for me. I think other people might disagree. They may be like, oh, Longa looks too old. In terms of her character archetypes, their character archetypes have to be reflected in their designs as well. Longa is sort of like the cool, not as loud and extroverted as Reiki is, and that is reflected in his character design. He's a bit more like, doesn't really show as much emotion most of the time, but gets excited about skateboarding, obviously. I think in terms of their archetypes and their designs, they both look youthful enough, especially when Longa gets excited. I remember distinctly that he looks very youthful when he gets super excited about skateboarding. So they got their job done for the teens. The adults are 26 and Tadashi's 28 when I looked up the wikis. Joe and Cherry do look like 26-year-olds. They clearly look older. Some 26-year-olds might be out there that have their lives together and appear very adult, while others might still appear very young at 26. So I think Cherry and Joe being at the other spectrum where they look very put together and they have their lives together at the age of 26 is very realistic, and they do look 26 to me. Tadashi does seem a bit older and jaded than Adam, and it kind of makes sense to me, their ages, like their age difference, how Tadashi's older, like he definitely seems older to me. So I would say Skate to Infinity is rarest Pokemon tier. It is good, like it's not bad. I feel like it could have been so much worse. Like they could have made these characters looking way too old, or like if they made Reiki and Longa looking overly buff, then yes, I would put it at a lower tier, but I don't believe they were like extremely overly buff. Like it makes sense for Joe to be that buff because he's 26 and he's probably like going to the gym. He's definitely a gym monkey rat person, the gym rat goon that is Joe to a T. So I think it's good. Next is Bleach season 1 and like 2. To me, they look visibly younger. As you could tell by the older like style, to me, Ichigo looks more realistically 15 in this. In season 1 and 2, like to me, like their ages look normal. So I'm gonna say Bleach season 1 and 2 gets a high 5. For me, like their ages make sense in those seasons. Like it could have been so much worse. Like it got worse where I had to flush my eyes out. Like obviously his style looks pretty. Like everyone looks attractive. I have to admit, as much as I hate to admit it, because I'm very salty of Kubo, he's good at character design. Like they all look very pretty and attractive and awesome. Like the character design is beautiful. His art is great in terms of character design. But for the, like how he depicts ages, it doesn't really, I don't think personally work out. I don't think realistically someone who's like 18 looks like Ichigo. I do think that I think it was supposed to be implied during the final fight that he aged up and that's why he looks older, but he didn't really experience like high school and all that other stuff, so he looks older visibly. But I don't think there should be that extreme of a visual difference of like 1 year of aging or even 2 years. Like I don't think it would be that extreme where he kind of sort of looks like a whole ass adult by that time. I just don't think it's realistic. So season 1 and 2 gets a high 5. They're doing a lot better than the later seasons. Oh yeah, I added Durarara on a whim. It's not even in my notes, because I suddenly just remembered Durarara exists. From what I recall, I don't think this show did terrible. Like they look, from this image, they do look like teenagers to me, at least the young teen kids. And I do think Shizuo and Izaya do look like they are older adults. I think they're in their 20s. They look like adults, young adults that got out of high school and they're trying to do their own thing. I do think maybe you did your job and got paid for it. I don't think it's like to the level of getting a high 5. There's probably some questionable stuff I'm forgetting because I haven't watched this anime in so long. So I'm just gonna put it in, you did your job and got paid for it. It's a B. It's a B. Not an A, but a B. Next we got Lovely Complex. We love to see it. Look how cute they are. Oh my goodness. I'm getting flashbacks to how happy I was back then. Oh my god. Look how fun, oh my god, look how wacky their clothes are and how much fun they're having. It's kind of wild looking back at how unapologetically these characters were able to wear terrible clothes, but like they look so happy wearing them. Like looking back on this, like I think her outfit looks normal, but like his is so like bright and over the top. I can never see myself wearing that, but it just makes me happy seeing them so happy in their very dated looking clothes. Okay, Lovely Complex is rarest Pokemon girl. Like they look like teenagers. There could be characters I'm forgetting where they should potentially be looking older, but they're supposed to be adults. I can't recall that many. Like I can't recall that many important characters being adults, but I haven't watched this since elementary school. So that's probably the reason why I don't remember. And from this image, they look like high schoolers. Like, they distinctly look very young. Usually romance anime get it right. Next, we got Bungo Stray Dogs. All the seasons. Oh my goodness, Bungo Stray Dogs. Okay. Where does Bungo Stray Dogs fall? One of my go-to shows that I love a lot. Bungo, Bungo, Bungo. Where do you go? In terms of nailing different age ranges, it nails most of the ages. Chuya and Dazai look visibly younger in the flashback portion. At least personally to me, there could potentially be some shots where Dazai looks unrealistically like not as young, but I distinctly remember when I first watched Bungo Stray Dogs that Dazai, I was like kind of shocked by how young they made Dazai look. I was like, whoa, Dazai looks super young, and like he was like only 15. It makes sense he looked young. But I remember being like shocked because I was so used to seeing shonen shows where it's like the characters are very visibly bulkier and like a little bit more overly muscled to be accurately 15 years old. So to me, Bungo Stray Dogs nailed in terms of flashback. Dazai had like those wide eyes where he looked childlike, but I do know in some like cuts or like parts of the episode, he kind of did still look a bit too older whenever they tried to go back from like going from the comedic scenes to the more serious scenes. So the scene where Dazai, I don't know if you all remember, but Dazai commenting to Mori, do you really see any value in living? When he makes that comment, it's like, what value do you really see in the act of living? And in that shot, Dazai looks way too old for his age. Like, he doesn't look like a 15-year-old. But in other shots, to me, he looks visibly like a 15-year-old, especially whenever they cut to like the chibi during like comedic scenes where he has those like really big eyes. So for me, it like flip-flops between being accurate in depicting ages and then being inaccurate. So it's not completely consistent. For Kyoka, she definitely looks younger to me personally because she's very like tiny in comparison to other characters. So to me, whenever characters like smaller than other characters, I'm like, oh, she's super young, and she looks very like her eyes are large, so I'm like, oh, she's definitely younger than Atsushi, obviously. Even when I first watched the show, I thought she was younger. Did I think that she was as young as 14? Probably not. I probably thought she was 15 when I first watched it, but definitely younger than Atsushi, I thought. They might have been able to make her look younger if they drew her a tad bit smaller in frame, but there are, like, she doesn't have to be super tiny just to be shown that she's younger, because there are, like, tall girls that are young out there. So I think she accurately shows that she's 14. 18-year-old Dazai kind of looks too old to be 18, but the 15-year-old Dazai looks young enough to me personally. I know to other people, the 15-year-old Dazai probably doesn't accurately look like young enough, but to me, the flashback, there were a lot of shots where he looked young. 18-year-old Dazai in the dark age does not look 18. Like, he looks similar to how he looks when he's like 21, 22, or whatever age in the current timeline. Like, he doesn't look 18 to me. So I think Bungo Stray Dogs is probably going to be in you did your job and got paid for a category. It's not amazing due to those, it flip-flops a bit and isn't really completely consistent in how it depicts ages, but it could have been worse. A B tier. I may have put Fullmetal, now I'm looking back on it, I may have put Fullmetal Alchemist too low, but I gotta remember, Ling looked way too muscled. Like, that was like over the top, and he's only 15. I gotta remember that. Okay, next is the one, the only, the iconic Haikyuu. We love to see it. We love to see it. Oh my goodness, I love them so much. Okay, they are all so amazing. My children, they've grown up so much. Oh my god. Oh, I'm thinking about the manga. Okay, love Haikyuu. Okay. Haikyuu is... Let me think this through. I'm kind of surprised A and B tier both have 6 animes in it, even though I said at the beginning, S and A tier both have 6 animes, even though I told myself it wouldn't be that many. Now that I think about it, I think Bleach probably should be lower. Why did I put Bleach so high? Bleach is more of a B, not an A. B for Bleach makes more sense. Okay, so Haikyuu, to me, oh my goodness, how do I even explain this? I think, and like in terms of overall, I would have initially put it in the reverse Pokemon card, like S tier. What I love about Furudate in terms of how Furudate draws is how obvious middle school to high school the difference was. Oikawa and Iwazumi in middle school look like middle schoolers, which is why I loved the flashback so much. Like, they clearly looked so much younger. Tobio looked younger. He looked like he was just from elementary school in that flashback because he was literally just from elementary school. So I do think Furudate nails the middle school, elementary school age. High school, I would say a high percentage of the characters look like high schools. I would say a majority. The only character where I'm like questioning when I look back on it is like, is this really high school or proportion appropriate, is Bokudo. Bokudo, or like I usually just call him Bo, however you call him, he is super beefy. Like, he is very muscular, especially in the manga. I know technically we're talking about the anime. If we're talking about the anime, I do think it would be out of a gate, like, immediately reverse Pokemon card. But because of Bokudo, and I know how he was supposed to be depicted in terms of like how clearly beefy and buff he's supposed to be, I do think I should put Haikyuu in gets high. It hurts me to say this, and gets a high 5, because that's a bit unrealistic. Like, you have to admit, like, it, like, I do, like, obviously there are like muscular teenagers out there, but I do think they would have a bit more baby fat on them. Like, they wouldn't look that sculpted in terms of their muscles. And that is like the only aspect I would say. I do think Furudate's body proportions are like top tier. Like, they nail body proportions. Amazing. They get a high 5, like 100% quality. In terms of age though, if you look back on it, obviously at the start of the series, Hinata does look visibly younger. I mean, like, by the end, it's like, oh, we can clearly see the aging. I just think that the in-between part, Furudate may have made them look a bit too perfectly sculpted for it to be realistic. Like, the amount of, like, fan art where it's like, I've seen Bokudo being so buff, and it's like, he's supposed to only be like, obviously if there's fan art of one, he's like an adult, and it makes sense, but high schooler Bokudo, like, it's a bit unrealistic, so I'm like, gets a high 5. I wish I could put Haikyuu higher, but I'm like, I gotta be realistic. I gotta put Haikyuu in the category it belongs, which is next to Yuri on Ice, My Little Monster, Toradora, Aharide, and Banana Fish. Like, they're kind of all on the same level. For me, it's not to the level of everyone else, I think, from what I'm recalling. Maybe it's because I've forgotten how accurately characters in Hunter x Hunter look. Perhaps they're a lot more muscular from what I remember from this image, but I'm just going on what I'm seeing, and I think it deserves a reverse Pokemon card. So I'm gonna keep everything up here as it is. I'm not changing my mind. I cannot change my mind. I know I'm very indecisive, but I can't let it happen in this tier ranking video, okay? I can't keep flip-flopping, guys. Next is Kuroko no Basuke. Kuroko no Basuke has the most ridiculous depiction of teenagers. But wait a second, before you all yell at me that Kuroko no Basuke belongs in Has Never Seen a Teenager, I'm going to remind you of the existence in season 3, I believe, of the flashback arc. And the flashback arc very accurately depicts how the characters that we have gotten to know very well, it accurately depicts them through the flashback that we see of like Kuroko's story and like what happened before he got into Seirin and the previous team he was in with the Generation of Miracles, how young they all looked was the most like accurate, I would say. Like it was like Haikyuu level accurate, where I was like impressed by how young they all looked, just because it was like night and day how it was night and day how different they looked. As teenagers, it is so unrealistic how they look, but the middle school age depiction was amazing. I'm gonna put an image of Midorima's face. He looks like a middle school babu child. Like, that is young kid in middle school, if I haven't ever seen one. Like, that is how kids look. So I initially would have put Kuroko no Basuke in Has Never Seen a Teenager, because they don't look like teenagers. And clearly the author hasn't seen teenagers. But only characters that look kind of like teenagers are characters of body types like Kuroko, where it's like we're thinner, we're leaner, we're smaller. Kuroko to me looks like a teenager. Everyone else look like they're in their 20s to 30s. Don't know why they were drawn like that. Very questionable, but Kuroko to me looks like a teenager. So Kuroko and then like their middle school selves clearly look like middle schoolers. So I can't put, I would have initially put Kuroko in Has Never Seen a Teenager. But because they nailed the middle school age depiction, I gotta hand it to Kuroko for that, so it goes up a bit. So I'm gonna put questionable, but they tried, because they tried, like, at least in terms of how they depicted the middle school age. Like, it was like try, like, you got there, but their high school depiction is totally off. Like, you've clearly not seen teenagers. So questionable, but they tried here. That is the tier it belongs in. Next, we've got Run with the Wind. Now, Run with the Wind, to me, immediately, because there isn't that many, like, characters in the show in terms of various age groups, we've got super older characters, like their coach that lives in the same house as them, who's, like, an older man. We've got the fourth year university students. We've got Nico-chan, who's, like, stayed back, at least I think a whole year he has been held back, so he clearly visibly looks older. And then the high school girl who helps them on their training on the runs. I think Run with a Wind is a solid show. I would say it gets a high 5. I do think the high school girl probably could have been depicted a bit younger looking in comparison to everyone else, but I do think Run with a Wind gets a high 5. There is a possibility that the main character, I think his name was it Kurahara? Something like that. He started with a K. Sort of like Kageyama, but not Kageyama. That's how I remember his name. Taiji looks older. So in terms of, like, he's in a later university year than Kurahara, so I think gets a high 5. Solid depiction. Should I put it higher? Yeah, I'm just gonna stick with gets a high 5 before I change my mind. Knowing me, I will, like, deliberate way too long on this. Okay, next is 91 Days. The show that I did that essay video on. Oh my goodness, 91 Days, I love it. Kind of want to rewatch it again, and I might end up rewatching it if I could convince my older brother to watch it. Okay, we've gotten 91 Days, and I would say because Emilio or Angelo, whatever you may call him, both names work technically, he does look visibly younger than Nero, and I think there's a slight age difference between them. I do think it was questionable that apparently, like, Nero was only 14 when that whole thing happened in the first episode, but he didn't look 14, like, in how they drew him. He was wearing very bulky clothes and most of his face was covered, so maybe that's why, to me, he didn't look very young, but that was sort of questionable. I would say for the most part, it would be in the category of gets a high 5. Like, it's not, I think it is fairly accurate. Like, Angelo is probably like 19 years old or something like that. Nero's a bit older. You could tell he's a bit older. Everyone else are mainly adults from what I recall, and they all look like adults. So I would say 91 Days gets a high 5. The reason I didn't put 91 Days in the rest of Pokemon cards is because Nero probably should have been drawn a bit younger for that portion, but he wasn't. That was the only bone I had to pick with 91 Days in terms of the depiction of ages. Next, we've gotten Nodame Cantabile. Did anyone who watches this channel watch this show? I don't know. It's a low possibility that any of you have watched this. I found this show on briefly when I was younger. I have no idea what I was looking up to find this show, but I was so glad I found it. It's so funny. I should probably rewatch it at some point. Love it. It's amazing. I do believe Nodame Cantabile depicted their ages normally. They're all in university and they looked like they were in university. So I'm going to put it in the rarest Pokemon card category where it's like they look either university age or adult age. And then we see through time their relationship development, and then they get older and they're out of university. So I'm pretty sure they all look like adults. Like I don't remember there being any teenagers in it. I think one of the openings, it depicts them and shows how they've aged over the years. So it's like a very cute sort of like slideshow-esque depiction of how they've grown when they get older. So that was nailed. Next, we've gotten Given. Oh my goodness. We love Given. I find it hilarious that for some reason, why is this? How am I gonna make this? How am I gonna get them all in this shot? I'm mainly getting drums in this image. Okay, whatever. I've tried my best to get all of them. At least we got Haruki and Uenoyama. Okay, for Given, it's questionable. You have to admit, okay, Haruki and Kaiji look older. I do think Mafyu and Uenoyama probably should look a bit younger, but they don't. So I think, maybe you did, I'm gonna put that in you did your job and got paid for it. I don't think it's Kuroko no Basuke level bad, because I don't want to put it in the same area as that. So I'm gonna put Given in you did your job and got paid for it. Like, it's not get to high five where I'm like, yeah, that checks out. It's more of like the murky middle tier where you're like, it could have been better, but it gets a pass. Or maybe it should be questionable if they tried. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna put it questionable if they try. I gotta be stricter for this. I think Uenoyama and Mafyu probably should have looked younger. A bit, like a tad bit. I don't know how. The thing is, it's very hard to stick with your style, but depict characters younger. So because of this, I could see the struggle in terms of how to depict Uenoyama and Mafyu younger. I do think Haruki and Kaiji do look like adults. So they nailed that, but the high school age is questionable. Next we've got is Free. And Free is the most obvious, the fastest category placement you will ever see in this entire video, which is has never seen a teenager because, oh my god, I nearly messed up the entire tier. Okay. Has never seen a teenager because guess what? They do not look anything like teenagers. Like, what teenagers look like this? What is happening on this show? Maybe Nagisa looks like a teenager. That is the extent. Everyone else looks way too old. They look like they're in their 20s. So has never seen a teenager category. I'm sorry, I can't move it. They're just too much. I cannot do that. I just can't. And I don't think I'm gonna move it, even though I do know when they depict it in like when they're elementary school age, they do look young. But that's elementary school age. And also, I wasn't really surprised because the style of the Free animation is a style that I expect them to draw young kids in that sort of way. The reason I was surprised for Kuroko was because I didn't expect them to be able to draw them as middle schoolers accurately. The style for Kuroko is more stricter, like shonen-like. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it's different sort of style. Free has a style where I expect them to be able to draw very big eyes, sparkly eyes. They should be able to draw kids looking like kids. Like, that's the expectation. That is like the bare minimum expectation I have. For Kuroko, the bar was so low that I was impressed when they went over the bar. That's what I mean. So technically, Kuroko could easily be in has never seen a teenager category. I just put it up because from my experience, my watching experience, my personal watching experience, I was more impressed by the flashback than the free flashbacks. The free flashbacks, I'm like, this is normal. Because we've seen the free flashbacks probably since the start of the series, where it's like they're depicting young, that's how they look as kids. Like, I expect them to look like that. Kuroko, we didn't really see it, and I was surprised when we did see it. So that is why it gets a bit above free. And next we've got Jojo's Bizarre Adventure. Dear God. Jojo immediately goes into Has Never Seen a Teenager, because I could go part by part, but I do not have time for that. Basically, based on part 5 alone, Giorno does not look like a teenager. I am sorry. So, Has Never Seen a Teenager. Should I put it in a lower category? I can't put Jojo in Flush Out My Eyes, please, because Jojo's too fashionable and pretty to be put in that category. So I'm putting it in Has Never Seen a Teenager. It is still terribly inaccurate, bad. What is going on? I honestly thought there would be more in the lower tiers, but ironically, I'm choosing a lot of shows. As you can tell by my taste in shows, maybe most of the shows I've watched have mainly been accurate, and that's why there's not that many in the lower categories. I find this so funny. Okay. Owari no Seraph is the next one. Seraph of the End in English. And Seraph of the End, I believe, is okay. Like, it's not S tier. I don't think it's A tier. I think Owari no Seraph is... The adults look like adults. The teens sort of look like teens. They did their job and they got paid for it. It's like a Bungo Stray Dogs level. It's like, questionable. There's probably some teenagers that don't look like teenagers. And maybe, I don't know the exact ages of Shinya and Guren. If Shinya and Guren are like super young, like they are like 19 or something, and I just don't know it, then I would say it's even lower. But because I don't know their ages, I'm assuming they're like in their 20s, because to me they look older. I would hope they're in their 20s. Otherwise, I would put it in a lower category. But because I don't know their ages off the top of my head, I can't tell. Next is Hero Academia. Hero Academia will be getting into which category? Let's see. Hero Academia, the teens to me actually do look like teens. Whenever there's like a distinct style change where the characters, as Deku has freckles, he looks young. Even Bakugo, he's a bit like stockier, like he isn't really... He's kind of like not super overly tall like some other shonen anime where it's like they're tall and muscular. The characters feel a bit shorter, and like because they're shorter and smaller, they look a lot younger. Like it's more realistic. They probably haven't gotten their growth spurt yet, or maybe they're just shorter people. You know, like not everyone's gonna be super like tall when they get older, like be 6'2" or whatever. So for the dudes, I mean, like not every single character is gonna be like 6 feet tall. So because of that, I would say Hero Academia gets a high 5. Like it's not S tier, I would say. I would say it's good. It's a good. And that is the last, oh my gosh, I just realized that is the last show we've got in this tier list ranking that I have for today. Okay, the last show was Hero Academia, which is kind of hilarious. So as you can see, I would do believe Flush Out My Eyes, Please, and Has Never Seen Teenager probably could be combined into one category. Bleach just gets lower because of my disappointment of that series overall, and also just how does he look like that? And that's supposed to be teenagers. No. Jojo probably is more accurately like even lower, but we're gonna put Jojo there because how not? Oh, what happened? I added Spy Family again by accident. Okay, so these are the summaries of my tier list rankings for depiction of ages in anime. Let me know if you disagree with any of these rankings. I kind of did this on the fly and I can't remember every single character's accurate ages. A lot of these I kind of just went on what I saw when I looked at the images I've looked up and how I felt about whether or not they depict high schoolers well in terms of their body proportions. As I said before, if they have questionable body proportions that I just don't vibe with, I'm gonna end up putting it lower in the ranking. Case in point, Code Geass. I don't really, like, looking back on it, I don't really vibe with the artistic style that I did back then. Like, as I would today, I don't think I could be able to watch Code Geass as easily because it's not really the type of style that I go for in terms of anime these days. So, because of that, it got a lower category. And as you can see, I expected this tier list to be more bottom heavy, but I've slowly realized that a lot of the shows that I've watched are fairly okay in terms of depicting age, especially a lot of our romances or any sports anime that has a lot of older characters like Run with the Wind, where they're adults. So to me, it looks more realistic. Because of this, I ended up having a more top-heavy list. If I were to include more shonen shows, or I've looked up more shonen shows, maybe it would have been more bottom-heavy, but because I don't really watch that many shonen shows, as you could tell, it didn't really turn out that way. So let me know what you thought of this video in the comments below. Do you have any other tier or ranking ideas I could do? You can also let me know. I don't know if I'll actually do them. I'll check the comments and let you all know what I may or may not vibe with, but we'll see. Other than that, I'll see you all in my next video. Bye!